Welcome to the GoldenComm Podcast. Special guest with me today, Steve Churm. Steve Churm, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. I'm delighted to be here.
Steve, I will confess, I love our conversations. We've been friends for many, many years. The conversations that you and I have had, many of them I cherish for a long time. And so this is extra special for me because this gives a chance for other people to listen in on a treat for me is my conversations with you.
Well, you're very kind, and the feeling is deeply mutual in terms of what we've discussed, the topics, the places, I think just the life experience. So thank you very much. And this is an honor to be here, your studios, in front of a mic with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve, for always pumping me up. I love that. Okay, so if you don't know Steve Churm and you spent time in Orange County, if you grew up in Orange County, if you live in Orange County, or you've just spent considerable time in Orange County, you might know your name, you might know your face, you might know you personally, but I will almost guarantee that you've seen his fingerprints, because your fingerprints are all over this place. And we're going to talk about why we're going to get up to where your fingers have been, because you have a remarkable career and a remarkable legacy that you've left on this county, which is really what that's what I want to talk about. But for us to get there, we always got to start from the beginning, because the beginning is interesting. And this is a layup for you. Where did you grow up, and what was the best part about where you grew up?
I love dusting this off and looking way back at my point in time, so thank you. I was really Wisconsin born, California raised, and if you really want to get specific, I grew up in North Orange County at a time in the 60s and early 70s when it was all about lemon trees and avocados and bridle trails and a very, very sort of bucolic suburban lifestyle way up in North Orange County when frankly this county and this broader community was simply a series of small bedroom communities where people lived and then drove to Los Angeles to work, right? But I grew up in North Orange County, and it was just, as a young boy, I could build forts in the field and play football in the front yard, and it was just a different time. It was just a great upbringing that I reflect on from time to time, how blessed I was.
So Orange County, for those that live here, which is a lot of the people that watch that, it's the county in between, LA and San Diego.
Yes.
Right? So when I travel to, let's say I go someplace far away, like let's say I go to Florida, where are you from? I say, LA. Because if I say Orange County, where is that? But they're getting there.
Right.
We're getting there. We'll talk about that.
Right.
So what city? Because North Orange County, what city?
Fullerton.
Fullerton, California.
Fullerton.
Got it. And your mom and dad raised you?
Mom and dad.
Okay.
And
what did they do?
Father was a veteran of the Korean War, worked for a company, Kimberly-Clark, made Kleenex, toilet paper, headquarters in Wisconsin, hence that's where I was born. Neenah, Wisconsin. He was transferred to Fullerton. They had a big plant at the time. Did really good job. They wanted to bring him back to Wisconsin, and my father and mother, who grew up in the Midwest, the frozen tundra of West Chicago, said, nope, we're going to plant a flag here and raise our family in Orange County. The future of America, my dad thought.
That's what he thought.
And he left Kimberly-Clark, started a company, and manufacturing company, and that's what he did for almost 40 years. Very successful. But and my mother, she became very engaged in the community, and that certainly informed me and part of who I am today. But very much a part of the North Orange County community.
Right. Yeah. We have some similar stories. Just really quick. My dad is a Marine. And he flew cargo during Nam. We lived in Japan. I don't remember this. I was told this.
Right.
Anyway, long story short, we end up at El Toro. And then he got his papers to go to the next place. And my mom announced, you can go wherever you want, but I'm staying here. Because this is where I'm staying.
It's exactly the
same.
same.
And so he, after 5 years, he got out of the Marine Corps and he did real estate for 50 years. So same story,
Yes.
right? You come here and you can't help but to say, well, we couldn't help. My parents couldn't. Your parents couldn't help but say, this is where we're going to be. Yeah, very similar story.
The sunshine, the space, and really something we may talk about, the promise of Orange County then, now, and looking toward the future.
Love it. All right. So you get going. Is this Sunny Hills High School? Is this Fullerton High School?
Sunny Hills High School.
Okay, so
Yeah,
which
it
is
was
still there.
Yes.
And then, I know you, so you went to Cal Poly.
Yes.
Right. And was that a 4-year program there?
That was a 4-year program.
Okay. And I do know that you wrote there because you are a journalist. By the way, pretty intimidating for me to interview. The best journalist in the room is sitting next to you. It's hard to interview the best journalist. But you're a journalist, and it starts, when did you pick up the pen? Did you always want to be a journalist?
Oh, that's a great question. It was really in elementary school, and it was really my mother and my grandmother, Esther Rao. Esther Rao, what a great name.
That's good.
My grandmother and her daughter, Carolyn, who was my mother, and the two of them constantly talked about the value in being able to communicate, all right? Through the written word, through orally. If you can communicate, you can do just about anything. And so it was really in elementary school, much to my sort of resistance, that my mom really encouraged me to raise my hand on projects, be the writer on the project, be the researcher on the project. So it was really in elementary school when you're studying the California missions, when you're talking about what's best and famous in your hometown. That's where I began to write. Big letters, printing, not so much cursive, but that's where it really began, the storytelling that has really kind of followed me through the different iterations of my career.
I love it. The value of communication.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
So you get to Cal Poly, and formally, do you have a journalism major? I mean,
There currently is and was then a journalism program, but I entered Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, great 4-year institution. Not sure I could get there today with my grade point average. I mean, it has now become one of the most sought after destinations for high school seniors, not just in California, but in the country because of the location and everything going for it. But I went in as a sociology major, and I realized after about 6 or 7 months, I could either come out and be a first responder, fabulous career, but that really wasn't who I was, or I could go into government work and be kind of a social worker. And I said, no, I need something that will inspire me. Just about that time, the end of my freshman year, here comes a great book, All the President's Men. Bob Woodward,
Yep.
Carl Bernstein, Watergate, Richard Nixon. And not only was the book phenomenal, then comes a movie with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. And there's a whole generation of journalists that were touched by the sort of celebrity quality of seeing that, right? We can change the world if we can discover what's wrong with the world and write about it. I wanted to be the next Bob Woodward. And that really meant I wanted to be the next Robert Redford in the movie, okay? That didn't quite work out.
That's right.
But Bob Woodward was a path I followed. So I changed majors after my freshman year, went into journalism, and spent the next 3 years working on the Mustang Daily, ultimately becoming the editor-in-chief of the paper. And surprisingly, for a university that was best known for its agricultural program, people come from all over to study animal husbandry and crop science. People come from all over to be in the architecture program, engineering. We're over here in this little room, the journalism folks, but we had a great paper. And the university left us alone, and we really ran our own business. It was the best 3 years at Cal Poly, and that's where it all began.
That explains a lot. And I didn't know that. So thank you.
Something new.
Yeah, well, that's what we're wanting. That's what I want.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking earlier. You were starting to tell me some stories I didn't know. I'm like, save it. So I want to hear it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All the King's Men. You graduate, and where do you go?
Well, I'll tell you, I graduated, and boy, I'm ready to go, and I'm now this journalist, and I'm just, I've got that good housekeeping seal on me, and I'm going to go out and find the next Watergate. You know what I found? was the nearest press box, because my first job was the San Luis Obispo County Telegram-Tribune, the county newspaper in San Luis Obispo on the central coast of this great state. And my first job was as a sports writer, sitting in press boxes in places like Paso Robles, Atascadero, Cambria, Arroyo Grande, October, November, Friday nights, and that part of the state gets cold. And there are no windows. And we're on old Royal typewriters. These aren't laptop computers. And I have to haul this typewriter up, and I'm writing the story there. As the game ends, I finish the story, pull the paper out, jump in the car, and drive back to San Luis Obispo to file the story for the Saturday newspaper. That's how it began, telling stories about high school athletes and what they go through to really pursue their passion. That's great storytelling.
So good.
It's really good. So that's where I started. Yeah.
Can you transport me back there? That's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It requires so much skill and effort too. And grit. This is not easy.
Right. And
this is not an easy, what you just described is not an easy feat.
Well, and you needed a couple of sweaters, not one,
Yeah.
and then a jacket on top of that,
Yeah.
right? You needed some fortitude, but it was great, and that was my first reporting job, and I think that year, my first year at the Telegram-Tribune, I made $12,898. 1 year's salary.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great.
All right.
And,
So you're cutting your teeth. You're doing local sports. You're meeting people, having fun. You're making deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
yes.
If you don't make the deadline,
that's right.
Don't even show up.
That's right.
Because there's no online version.
Yeah.
Right. And you do that for a couple of years?
I did that. I was at the Telegram-Tribune for 2.5 years.
Okay.
I did the sports reporting for about a year. But I really, if I was going to move into my next sort of stage and really think about Bob Woodward and what he was doing, I needed to move. And I then moved over and started covering county government in San Luis Obispo. Entirely different. And then I started covering politics, breaking news. But I really began to blossom as a news reporter, right? Not just a sports reporter, but a news reporter covering, all of the different machinations of life, the good, the bad, the troubling. And it was just a wonderful 2.5 years. But I also came to the realization that San Luis Obispo County, as wonderful as it was not the destination or the end game for me. It was really being at a very significant, I think, news outlet that could really take me places and allow me to cover stories of even greater consequence. And so 2.5 years later, we left San Luis Obispo County. I had married by then and came to Los Angeles.
Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. I got to double click on that.
Okay.
We were married by then.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about Cinda.
Oh, listen, it's been marvelous, and we're celebrating our 48th wedding anniversary. So it's just, she has been an absolute angel, and she is about as level as a calm ocean or harbor. She is so smooth and been so supportive of my very mercurial career as a journalist, and then as really a media entrepreneur. And I can get very excitable. I can get very interested in things and find myself distracted. She has been the absolute rudder for me and really our life together. It's been great. But I got married my senior year in college. She had already graduated. She was a year ahead of me, and began her teaching career there in San Luis Obispo County in Arroyo Grande.
So a young Churm family, Steve and Cinda, married in San Luis Obispo. You both agree to come back to Orange County. Mm-hmm. And where'd you move to? What city?
Well, we came back actually to Los Angeles County and settled in the South Bay.
Okay.
Redondo Beach first, and then Manhattan Beach, and all three of our children were born in Los Angeles County, in Torrance. We lived in Manhattan Beach at the time, and I worked at the Telegram at the South Bay Torrance Daily Breeze. and then went from there to the Orange County Register, still living in LA County and commuting into the Register in Orange County, and ultimately from the Register to the Los Angeles Times.
Whoa, okay. So newspaper. How can you get me to Churm Media? Can you get me there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I had been for 14 years working for newspapers, and kind of stair-stepping my way up in terms of the size of the newspaper, in terms of circulation, the geographic reach of the newspaper. It was at the Register in 1983 when the 1984 Summer Olympics were coming. The Register here in Orange County, the biggest daily newspaper where I was working in Orange County, was really waffling on whether they would even cover the Olympics, which was going to be 30 miles away. Said, well, that's an LA event. And a couple of us, and I was the young reporter who went to the editor-in-chief and the publisher and said, no, the Olympics is a global event. We need to cover it because people in Orange County will care about it. We did. I was on that for a year. It worked well. I then went to the LA Times, springboarded from that experience, and then was at the LA Times for almost 8 years, covering lots of different things. But it was my father, tremendous influence, that Korean War veteran who said to me, you've got a great career, what you're doing. You're at the top of your field. But if you really want to have control over what you're going to do and how and where your life and your family's going to go, think about going into business for yourself. Remember, he left a large corporation with a clear path to success and started his own business. And that really influenced me. We then looked at Orange County, and along came Churm Publishing. Founded Churm Publishing and started creating magazines in this growing marketplace called Orange County.
So that's Peter.
Peter was my father.
And Kimberly Clark, Wisconsin, transferred, come back, no. That's when he started his entrepreneurship in manufacturing, you said.
Manufacturing.
So I didn't know that. I knew some things that he had done, but didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so the Churm family gets the bug from Peter, right? And now you're doing Churm Publishing. What are you publishing? You said magazines, but is that OC Metro? Is that the one that I know, OC Metro? Tell me about OC Metro.
It began as first Metropolitan Journal. We then changed the masthead and the title to Orange County Metropolitan, and then realized that Metropolitan had way too many syllables, and we shortened it to OC Metro. Orange County was emerging in the 90s as its own metropolitan center. Remember, it was just simply bedroom communities serving LA. But suddenly, people in Orange County said, no, wait a minute. We are our own community. We're our own community, economically, culturally, socially, and even with some of our own issues. And recognizing that, shortened the name of our business lifestyle magazine from Metropolitan Journal, Orange County Metropolitan, to OC Metro. It was faster, it had more currency, and people would remember it more. And when they saw OC Metro, it immediately resonated with a lot of people. And that was the first of what ultimately became 10 magazines in our company that went from Churm Publishing to Churm Media.
Okay. Churm Publishing, OC, what turned out to be OC Metro, which was the free magazine. Let's talk about what the business plan is besides printing and publishing. Tell me just real quick, what's the business model of OC Metro? And then we'll talk about
OC Metro generated its revenue and therefore its return based on advertising sales. So what our model was to put as many magazines on the street, free to readers, whether it was in an office building in a lobby, whether it was in a major commercial center, whether it was in a grocery store, whether it was in the airport, all right? Stands of OC Metro that people could pick up and take with them. And that then we went to advertisers and said, we're giving you this kind of distribution, all right? 6 figures in terms of the total print run on this magazine, and you can reach this kind of audience. and it worked for a long time. It worked for a very long time. Advertisers liked it. They liked the reach, and they liked the model, and it proved very successful to the point we launched other magazines with the same or similar model.
Help me with the years on that, please.
Well, that was 1990.
1990
to 2012.
2012. That's a
22 years.
22-year run.
Right.
And underneath OC Metro comes OC
Family magazine, right?
OC Menu.
Right.
What are some of the other ones? Don't hit them all, but maybe a couple of the other ones.
Well, we had OC Home.
Okay.
And we ultimately launched Inland Empire Family Magazine, realizing much like Orange County, the Inland Empire was a growing family destination where people were going to live to raise families because of schools, because of affordability. So we launched a magazine there. We launched Las Vegas Family in Southern Nevada. Again, as the suburbs of Las Vegas really began to emerge as places where that workforce would live and raise families away from what we all know Vegas is the Strip, right? We then had 3 golf magazines, OC Golf, San Diego Golf, and we had Inland Empire Golf, which included the Coachella Valley. So we had a number of publications, all magazines.
That's awesome.
All part of legacy media.
Yeah.
Or what some people call traditional media.
Right, right. And you know this because of our friendship, but I'll say in the podcast here, about this time I'm starting my business, and one of my BHAGs, one of my goals is to be in OC Metro as an advertiser, not even as a story, because you had great stories about 40 under 40. You had a lot of events too. I just wanted to be in OC Metro because I would read it religiously, and it was a pulse of what was going on in business in Orange County. That's what it was. It was that to me. There's a journal also, but this was more colorful to me.
Right.
And Jill, my sales
That's
rep.
right. Jill Perisic, now Jill Rusted.
Yes, she got me in there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was in there for years.
Yes.
Years and years.
And I am grateful for the dollars you spent.
It was a lot to me at the time, but boy, was I proud of it. I mean, I was fired up.
I hope it worked. I hope there was some sort of return. And the return was ultimately what we did in business together.
Oh, we have so many stories.
In terms of retaining your services, because you really fundamentally took a legacy media company in 2006, 2005, 2006, if I have the timing correct, that really was on the precipice of rapid change, going to new media, the arrival of social media and the internet. We weren't really there as a legacy media company. And we could see, thanks to you and the foresight you brought, we could really see something called extinction out there. All right? We could see that on the horizon. And you came in and presented a plan, a strategy to go and build on the legacy success we'd had, but become part of new media. And it was expensive. And I wondered, should we do this? But if we hadn't, Churm Media would have disappeared so much sooner. So thank you to you and GoldenComm and the vision you had. And that's how we're linked.
Well, we hit it just right, just in time. Yeah. And so that was cool on so many events. It was our first contract as a company at GoldenComm that was over $100,000, our very first one. And boy, did I think we had arrived. I mean, I said, guys, we've arrived. We have got the OC Metro account. And that was so cool for me because I just wanted to be an advertiser in your program. And you picked us, which was great. And that is where we became good friends because you were our biggest client and we were at your office every week.
You were my biggest expense. Okay, so we, touche.
Thanks for that.
And it was a blessing.
Yeah, it was
somebody
fun.
delivered you to our front door, and I will be forever grateful for that moment.
Do you remember the OC Metro Minute?
I do.
Let's just talk about that.
Is
that your idea or Craig's idea or whose idea was that?
No, I think I'm going to give Kimberly Peraza the credit on this.
This is way ahead of its time. So go ahead and tell me the OC minute.
Well, and this goes back, actually, you were asking about my roots and storytelling and so forth. The one thing I did through elementary school, junior high school, and then in high school, my mother required that I take speech classes, that I get in front of groups of other students and present. All right, and you can imagine as a junior high school guy, I'm not doing that. No way. But all of that training led to a lot of the things I did professionally, including the minute when Kimberly Peraza came in and said, let's do 2 minutes. We'll call it the OC Metro Minute.
Yeah.
We'll just do 2.
Nobody's going to listen to 2 minutes.
Let's
right.
give it 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes, and we're going to do headlines several days a week, and then we'll put that on our website, and we'll attract viewers who don't have time to read legacy media anymore, the Register, the LA Times, but they will listen to what we have to say about what are the 2, 3, 4 things that are trending right now. And this was in 2007, 2008. You talk about forerunner to podcasting, or, now the Wall Street Journal has its 13-minute overview every day on what happened overnight and what's ahead. 13 minutes. We were doing that in less than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was
you
amazing.
brought in the infrastructure to do that and then get it posted every day. Again.
Yeah. Which much like the typewriter at San Luis Obispo, ripping it off.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That just as really hard, because streaming wasn't. I mean, it was really it was early, and I couldn't have had more fun. It was great. It just really springboarded us, and thanks for the compliments just in time, because you positioned yourself for a sale, right? And so the sale is, it's inevitable. What killed magazines, and there's still some magazines around, and hyperlocal, which you taught me, and I remember Craig running through the hallway saying names and faces, names and faces, names and faces. Right. If you ask anyone at GoldenComm, because we do some stuff, local publications, and James, what do I say?
Names and faces.
How many times do I say it?
100 times a day.
Yeah. And Livy's here with us. It's her first day. Livy, names and faces, names and faces, names and faces, because that still works. Yeah. Because the people are interesting. And that's what OC Metro was, and OC Family, and OC. So names and faces, but there was no way of beating pay-per-click. Which is really what ended. It wasn't like that people didn't like to read magazines. Advertisers couldn't justify it.
Right.
How could you justify running ads when over here your same budget would yield you a website visitor in pay-per-click? And so it was just inevitable, and you actually caught that. You had the foresight of catching that. Tell us, about the sale.
Well, it was 2010, 2011, really began to think about what's next for Steve Churm, but most importantly, how sustainable is our legacy media company? Even though we had added an advertising component, an agency, Ripe Orange, which was interacting with our advertisers, so we created a new revenue stream there. And we were still selling, a fair amount of advertising, but it was not keeping up with the overall cost structure and model of being a legacy media company. And I really began to think about, we need to do something different. I had also reached the 22-year mark, and that was longer than I thought I would stay in that game. Maybe it was a couple of years too long, and really began to look around, how could we really transfer this business to somebody else, sell this to somebody else, all right? And who would be interested? And lo and behold, it was the Orange County Register, really Freedom Communications at that time, that really felt that what we have could really be additive to what they were trying to do. And by the way, the Orange County Register at one point, almost 750,000 subscribers in their heyday here in Orange County. They were the voice of news in this county. But they were seeing their circulation, their subscriptions decline, and they were looking for anything that would just add something to what they were doing. They were hanging on too. They had their hands on the ledge, the proverbial skyrise, trying not to fall off it. And they acquired Churm Media, and I went and worked for them for 3 years before I left.
Yeah, I remember the two people that ran that, Matt and
Aaron Kushner, Eric Spitz.
And they were noble because they went on a hiring frenzy to hire a bunch of journalists, and really were making one last run at content, which was a good idea. But again, you couldn't beat the pay-per-click.
Well, I'm telling you, I am forever grateful to them. Whatever history will ultimately judge them on in terms of their view, but they thought that print was still very relevant. And in really the acquisition of Churm Media, it was a requirement that all, at that time, 36 employees of Churm Media would join Freedom Communications for a period of at least 6 months, which they honored, and we did. And for me, it was important because of the people who had worked for me. But I also thought we were bringing great talent to a team that needed that. They were doing some great things in terms of trying, but we brought some immediate, it was just like an injection of caffeine or something into that. And so, and stayed there for 3 years before then I had sort of run my course with the Register and needed to find yet another frontier.